Hi folks, welcome back to Atebeno Park, and today I'm doing Tyrannosaurus tour. So I've already put in the general terraforming and set up rocks to set up a perimeter and put a wall across where I'll be putting the viewing building and a Tyrannosaur in there to test whether it would stay in this space. And you're joining me as I'm doing terrain painting to try and set up this nice ground for it. As I understand it, the terrain painting won't really affect the animal's happiness. It's mostly an aesthetic thing, and I could paint this all snow and it wouldn't care. Uh, it will care about the foliage that is painted, however, and only about the foliage that's painted as it's been explained, as far as I'm aware, by the developers. So modular plants won't affect it, yes or no, but it will play to the visuals, just like the terrain painting is playing to the visuals. I want to put some water in there so they have something to drink from. I really like going with the natural look rather than putting in pans and stuff. Um, yeah, it may not be as 100% accurate to a real dinosaur zoo like a real dinosaur would be, but real dinosaur zoo would be, but it looks better to me. So that's why I'm doing that. And I've been putting my foliage in with the brush, in part to practice for the time when the animals will care about what foliage is in there. As you can see, I'm concentrating largely on temperate, uh, temperate foliage because that will be that and maybe coastal will be a better fit for late Cretaceous foliage. There's still a lot of gymnosperms in the environment, but right now we have a fairly limited selection in alpha for that, particularly of taller plants. So, things like the coconut palm center screen here, and some Scots pines. And that's, I think, oh yeah, there's some arid gymnosperms, and that doesn't seem quite right to me for this environment. So I'm going, if I use those at all, it'll be sparingly. I am, however, using my favorite tropical and aquatic plants to do the ground cover kind of work. The and Araucaria or Acacia is the big wide one there, and the mangrove. They both make great ground covering shrubs, and so I'm continuing to use them as my go-to. Get a lot of coverage without spending a lot of time putting in individual plants. You can see me now putting in some more individual rocks because now I'm starting to go a little bit past the idea where you're putting in the stuff that's necessary to keep the animal from getting out to things that start making it look better. In the background there on the leftish side, you can see a little bit of water on the elevated section and then a cliff wall. And, well, that's prepositioning for a waterfall for the point when we get waterfall type effects to put into the game. They've been promised, and I'm waiting for them. So, at this stage in alpha, that's really just conceptualizing what one can do for a park, and the idea that there might be a great waterfall there is something that would look cool when it's finally finished. So, did the groundwork for it, even though I don't have the actual falls. Pre-alpha, before they messed with some of the parameters, you could push some of the ground back in and get a faux waterfall by eliminating some of the rocks right to the wall of water that's raised from the ground surface. It looked a little bit like a gelatin waterfall, but it was more evocative of it being a waterfall than just a bunch of rocks. So I don't know if you've ever seen Niagara Falls shut off, which it happens periodically. It doesn't look all that different from the bit that's behind this exhibit. Anyway, back to putting in plants, some aquatic stuff around the water, and that's looking pretty good. Yeah, always tweaking for more things. It's just the way I do things. There are some of those Scots pines going in to break up the pure angiosperm environment. And the next thing I'll be doing is playing with some of the rocks from this viewpoint. This habitat is intended to overlook a Hell Creek herbivore exhibit. Right now we only have Edmontosaurus to put in, but I expect we'll be seeing Triceratops, if not in beta, then in early access release. They're using the Ceratopsian rig because it has a lot of variants on it, and they can get more work out of the time they're putting in right now in order to get more stuff in the game for us players, and that's appreciated. But it does mean we have a lot of ceratopsians and a lot of hadrosaurs, and certain other animals we'd love to have won't be there at early access, but more will be coming along during early access as we work toward full release. So we're about to experience a little jump because I did a shelter tarp for the animals, which was a bit of a struggle, and I think I forgot to press the button for the recording. But there it is right there, it's pretty much center screen. It's one of the basic tarps expanded in size and then got its stretch function. The more I look at it, the more I think I need to go back and put at least a, well, maybe, I don't know, maybe it needs a post, maybe it don't. Right now it's intended to be under a tension between the rocks where it would be anchored and the elm tree on the one corner. But so this is, my looking around. I think the habitat is good enough to go for now. It's got some variety in it. The animals have space to move. They should be visible across a lot of it from the viewing building. Speaking of the viewing building, I also got a late start on recording this, but it was just basic building through a lot of that, and nothing, if you've been following along, that you haven't seen before. Dragging around my elevator door and putting it in place and just making a very plain rectangular building. This is the area where some personality starts coming in. Yeah, the concrete pillars give it some, but this is where it's going to start happening as something other than a box. And that's where a lot of the interest is. I didn't want to push this one out into serious architecture. I wanted a little bit of a hunting lodge feel to it, just because. And like with a lot of the buildings, I'm playing with different things that can be done with the pieces, and whether that makes for me a satisfactory look and feel for the whole thing. You saw me stretching those concrete columns out to basically fill a facing there, and I'm now putting in a lintel for where the door is going to be, so there will just be a little bit of that stone wall showing. And this is the door I picked, and it was giving me a little fussy stuff. It's not going to fit this hole exactly right, so I'm playing with it a little bit, and it's going to be a very wide door for a simple person. This is where the staff enters, and I think you're going to find I forgot to put a staff sign on it, but that's okay. It's not an issue right now. There's no staff. And when I put the pathing in, the path will end right at that door, so the guests won't have anywhere to go anyway. They won't get where they shouldn't be. And I don't have a keeper gate on the other side yet, because we don't have keeper gates to get into the habitats. So, having used the columns for the main viewing part, I realized I needed it for the elevator shaft too, so our handicapped guests can get up to the viewing platform, because right now this is the only way to see the Tyrannosaurs in this park. You have to come up here to the platform and look out onto their exhibit. As I think I mentioned before, it's intended to have an overlook to herbivore portion of the Hell Creek presentation. And someday there will be safari rides, and a Hell Creek safari is, always on my list of things to have in the park. I'm working on now to set up some rafters as part of selling this as real architecture. A little bit of verisimilitude, even though it may not be perfectly engineered or, the way it would be for sure. I probably should have just gone ahead and made these roof trusses, made one complete one and got it right before duplicating things. But since this thing's being made on the fly, rather than planning out meticulously about how it's going to look, I wasn't thinking that far ahead. But you will see later that I think you'll see later anyway, that I didn't quite get this right. Because one of the things that's happening with the beams right now is they're going slightly off true from the building planes, either the world space or from the immediate space. So you probably noticed when I put that first one down and then dropped it to be horizontal, it went off to one side at an angle rather than going straight across this building. And that's part of what I was talking about it being not quite on true. And it's very easy to see on the longer pieces like that. A little bit harder to see when you place the base of a column down to see if you really got it squared up to everything that was there before. And obviously I hadn't, so it didn't quite work out. So these are all made with more or less the same beam, just a question of scaling, making the narrower rafters and the slightly narrower king post that's going into the cross beam, and plop roof on top. And obviously it needs its edging. And I keep picking the wrong angled pieces to go with the various roof walls. There's something about the layout of the pieces that, for me, just always gives me a little bit of confusion about where the pieces are and what I'm working with. This is about where I decided that I'm just going to extend the roof down over the stairs. So my first thought was to do these two parallel ones. I thought that might look cool. But a full portico over where you'd start on the stairs. And then I decided eventually that, that whole, what the heck, just, it's going to be easier to just fill the whole thing in. So you'll see me come back to that. I added a little downturn just for a little bit more visual interest. And was wrestling with whether to make the uprights for all this stuff timber or make it concrete. And it was going to be concrete for sure to be the supports under the roof. So you can see me doing that here. I'm still trying to decide which way I want to go with the uprights, the posts. And eventually you'll see I plop down on the side of doing timber. And I started out by just doing that for the main stairway area, and then decided I like that look. So I'll go back in and take out those concrete posts over by the staff entrance to the lower level of this building. And little extra work, but there probably were smoother ways I could have done this. But since I'm building it on the fly, I don't have the luxury of laying it all out necessarily where I can see what's going on very well. So the videos, you will see me fussing with things and moving them around, not quite getting the angles right. So, it could have been done with less effort, when you're thinking about what you want to do and still trying to progress with it, sometimes you have to do a little backtracking. Now, sometimes I will conceptualize these buildings, at least in a general look, and I had come up with a general conception for this building and then promptly forgot it when I sat down to actually build it. Hence this construction rather than something that probably would have been a little bit more elaborate and a little more exciting architecturally. Uh, but I'm kind of liking this hunting lodge vibe. And yeah, it's only alpha. It may not survive. So I'm happy to go with this and have it be this way for now. And, you know, if we were already in early access, I might have ripped this out and started over again when I remembered I had had a different original plan. But I was deep enough in it at this point, and again, being only alpha, I decided just to press on and get a more completed building. So one of the little sheets you can do, you can see I put in those 4 beams, highlighted them, and by duplicating them and rotating them down, I get my posts, and they're exactly lined up with those beams. It's going to turn out that the beams aren't really where I want them to be, but if I had gotten them in the right place, it would have saved a little bit of trouble. I might have even been better off starting with the posts where I could line them up with the bottom of the stair walls and then get everything lined up to that and just duplicate them to make the beams. But like I said, this is a fly by the seat of the pants and do it. And here comes the swap out of wood for stone, which I promised you a while back. So getting near the end of the main structural build here, there are obviously some more things that need to be done. Not the least, the elevator shaft needs to have a roof. And there's no, forgetting my words today. There are no windows. Like I said, building this on the fly, I was having another debate with myself about just how much glass I wanted to put in up there in the viewing area. I do have a concrete standoff to keep Tyrannosaurs from plucking guests from the viewing gallery. And, having them have the hot, fetid breath of a dinosaur blow in their face if it contemplates plucking one of them from the platform would certainly be an experience. But in the real world, it might not be all that good a thing to let your guests experience. So I knew for sure I'd put glass in the side and the non-habitat side of the building. And then I finally decided to just go ahead and put it all the way around. And so I did. And wanted it inset a little bit. And then I also decided that I needed to make sure that the edges of the metal framing on the glass was visible. And just because it adds that little break in texture and it looks a little less fake. I probably, in the real world, should have done some trim around the window frames, to break up the stone to glass transition. But that was fussy work I didn't feel like doing. You probably noticed that the windows are not all the same width. So that makes that kind of work pretty fussy. But I did decide for those tall open spaces, I would go with a mostly glass take to add just a tiny bit of more modern architectural interest to this log, well, not log, but this, cabin in the woods kind of feel. I'll also take advantage of the fact that I, left those spaces to begin with. One of necessity next to the elevator, and one of convenience, which is between those double columns at the head of the stairs, because it was the head of the stairs that dictated putting the double columns there. And I did, for this build, forget to put in the information screens and stuff, and that double column was a prime place to put an information screen. But I did notice that I had screwed up on placement of those roof rafter trusses, and fixed the one on the end, and then tried to bulk fix a bunch of them, or at least make it better, and didn't quite click them all, so some individual adjustment. They still ended up a little bit off, and at that point, this deep into the build, I decided it's going to be what it is. I also decided I'd spare you spelling out the letters. You've seen that before. So Tyrannosaurus up there. This one is a little bit taller than the base font compared to its width, just for something a little different. And then put in my stone plaza and my asphalt staff path, and then a path onto the plaza. I did not, for this video, come in and do some plantings around this area out here in front of the exhibit. The roundabout there is, of course, so our guests can get to the, someday in the future, Hell Creek herbivore area. Obviously, I would need to keep my guests from falling off the side of the stairs, and I decided to do it with a set of these narrower posts, and I, set them up all at the same height. And because they're of a sufficient height at the base of the stairs, I can just later come back and grab all of these and just move them up, and I don't have to mess with changing their sizes. It's just go, go, go. And I finally remembered to use one of the key binds to get to the movement as soon as I selected it, rather than always going back and calling up the menu itself mechanically. So once one set is in, it's child's play to duplicate and get the full set. So no one's fallen off those stairs. Maybe down them, but not off the side. Time for a little bit of decorative flair to this building build, and put in some railing at the side of this entrance, and then duplicate it over and bring it over to the elevator for much the same effect, but tidy it up in a slightly different way. And notice that it had gone skew, as these things seem to want to do right now, and I wasn't happy with that, but I decided there made more sense to get them in the center. So there you have it. So let's take a look at some tyrannosaurs in their nice new habitat. So that's a fierce hello from, I think that's our male. This is the leatherhide skin. They seem to be liking the place they've got here. Or maybe they like the cameraman. Nope, nope. Too small a morsel, I guess. Particularly when there's already meat on the table. Kind of liking how it came out. And so we're coming to the end of this video. And that's where he'll look over his kingdom. And I hope you'll look in on another video that I do. We're getting to the end of Atebeno Park for this build. And yes, goodbye to you, Rex. Goodbye to you folks. Thanks for stopping by.